Welcome back to PLS 510, Forage Management and Utilization. Today we're going to take up forage crop establishment, and we're going to do it in two parts. But we're going to start with the idea of keeping this in mind. I want you to throughout this whole section on forage establishment, I want you to keep in mind that the goal is the germination, emergence, and establishment of very small seedlings. The crimson clover plant on the left is less than about 1.5 inches tall. The perennial ryegrass on the right is about maybe 2.5 to 3 inches tall, but you can see that it is very spindly and very small in comparison to the rest of the field. So I told you we're going to do it in two parts. The first part, we will cover matching forage to the site, soil fertility and fertilization, and variety selection. So let's take up matching the forage to the site. And there's an overriding principle that I want to stress, and that is that if we've got all the options, we should pick the forage. If we have unlimited options, say, we should pick the forage that is as productive as the site. And I think the mistake that's made sometimes, especially with species like native warm season grasses, for example, that are really known to be able to grow and to do pretty well on low fertility, maybe even challenged sites like mine soils. But in fact, if we're thinking about yield as the outcome and profitability as the outcome, a native warm season grass that is going to be deep-rooted and prepared and ready and willing and able to grow in the summer should be on a soil like a bottomland soil that's well drained enough to support those plants, but that would provide good land, good fertility, good rooting zone for them to grow well in the summer. Now, I want to talk about the special case of alfalfa autotoxicity in the context of site selection. And we've just finished or refinished recently the unit on alfalfa. And of course, you'll realize that autotoxicity is the place where, or is the condition where plants are toxic to themselves. And in the case of alfalfa, the mature plants inhabit germination of the new alfalfa by compounds that are water soluble and produced by the tops, not by the roots. So our general recommendation when we are trying to plant alfalfa behind alfalfa is that we can thicken up a stand at any time in the first 12 months. In other words, the alfalfa autotoxic principles had not had a chance to become concentrated enough to hinder the germination and growth of those seedlings planted into, say, a thin stand of alfalfa that didn't take the first time. Other ways we can deal with thinning stands is to drill orchard grass into those thinning stands, kill the alfalfa, and then manage as a grass for a year and then replant with alfalfa. We can interseed thinning alfalfa stands with red clover, but the more successful the reestablishment of alfalfa, the reestablishment of alfalfa will be more successful the longer a stand is thin and has little or no alfalfa in it. So let's take a look at soil fertility and fertilization next. Obviously, the best way to know what to do in terms of soil fertility is to get a soil test. And in particular with alfalfa, because alfalfa can have it does have the highest soil pH requirements of 6.5 to 7, but pHs above 6 are required for nitrogen-fixing bacteria, and a pH of 6.5 to 7 is optimum. And you can tell that the plants on the right are well nodulated and the plants on the left are not. Another reason that lime and pH is so important is that pH has an effect on the availability of other nutrients. Here's pH 7 in the middle, and this is more acidic, and this is more basic, but you can tell that 5.5 or 5.7 to just over 7 is our good range here in Kentucky, and we're fortunate that most soils will fall within this range, and in central Kentucky, more close to 6.5 than not. I would like to remind you that as we're establishing a crop, we should think about what came before Was it pasture or was it hay? And what effect that has on nutrient removal. You'll remember that hay, such as in the top, removes 100% of N, P, and K, and grazing only 10%. And a special case of that we need to remember is if you're following a crop like corn silage, where all of the fodder material is removed from a field, that's notorious for removing a high percentage or a lot of potassium from a soil. And so get that soil test and know what you need to put back in order to give your new crop a chance. And the final part in this section will be on variety selection. Now, variety selection is a topic that I do like to talk about in Kentucky, because we are fortunate here that we have a very robust variety testing program, and we'll talk about that more in the future. But this is one of the first places, one of the things you need to go to, or the place you need to go to find out what is in a bag of seed. This is the seed tag, and Kentucky has fairly stringent seed tag laws, and this happens to be Persist orchard grass, which is a product of the University of Tennessee, but it is a certified seed bag of Persist orchard grass, and you can tell that it has the purity, the other crop, the inert matter, the weed seed, noxious weeds listed on the label, the germination, how much hard seed, the total germination, and where the seed came from. I'd like to go into a little bit more now the differences between varieties, brands, and blends. If every seed bag came this way with certified seed, then it would be relatively easy to tell, okay, well, it's got a blue tag, it's a blue tag bag, so therefore we know that it's a variety. Number one, it's not a blend, it's not a mix, and we can go back and see if that variety has been tested under that name anywhere else. But that is actually getting to be less and less common. More common for varieties with defined genetics, I told you about certified seed, it's the company-defined varieties, or plant variety protected, or PVP. And if you think of it like brands of cars, even though the federal government has standards for safety, a Chevrolet will define what a Chevrolet is. And a Chevrolet then stands behind their product. And that's very similar to what happens with seed companies. The seed companies, there are internal checks and external checks to make sure that the variety and the name on the bag is true to the seed inside, or seed inside true to the variety name on the bag, for example. But that the company really does define that. It is they do not go through a certified process. But those are tested under names, and before that they're tested as experimentals, and it's relatively easy then to track down performance of varieties. Now when you move over to brands and blends, it gets to be even more complicated. A brand tends to be a trade name, not a guarantee of genetic makeup, and it tends to be, and it can be a named, it's usually a blend, just a mix, or it's unnamed. It's usually unnamed. The one in Kentucky that comes to mind is 919. That's a brand that has been around a long, long time. What's in the bag is very seldom specified, and so it's just a brand. And it's really only as good as the company that's selling it to you and how truthful you think they are. It's not the way you'd like to go for most situations. Now, a blend, on the other hand, can be a good way to go because it's a mix of varieties. And all you need to do is look and see what the performance is of the named varieties on the tag. If you like those, or if they seem to be compatible based on the best you can tell, then, and the price is right, then a blend may be good. Now, this is a seed tag for a variety, Triple Trust 500, and if you think back to the previous lecture on alfalfa, this was the one sold by a Cynthiana vendor for about $4 1/4 a pound. And this has, and you can see the crop seed, other crop seed, weed seed, inert matter, and coating material. It leads me to mention to you too that most of our legume seeds now will come coated with about a 34% limestone and treatment coating. And we'll talk more about that later in this establishment lecture in the second section. Now, this is not the 919 MF Gold brand alfalfa. And I said brands don't typically specify varieties. Brands do not. In this case, though, this company is attesting to the fact that these are the resistance levels of the seed in this bag. So they obviously know something about the seed in that bag, but they're choosing not to tell you. Now, just when you think you've got this thing in a nice, neat box, here comes something called a Triple Trust Haymaker brand alfalfa. And in this case, it is a brand or a blend, but they're calling it a brand, that names the variety. The varieties present: 4-Grazer 4 alfalfa, or 4-Grazer 5 alfalfa, and L447HD alfalfa. We have tested only L447HD alfalfa in Kentucky. This happens to be one that I believe I found being tried or tested in sites north of here. But this would be the way you'd evaluate those two, is look up the performance of those two named components in that bag. And I told you that this happens to be a certified Kenland red clover bag with, again, the 34% coating. This is a seed tag and supplemental documentation from a bag of novel endophyte tall fescue. The novel endophyte tall fescues are a unique case of naming and a tagging situation. This one happens to be a certified variety, certified Jessup tall fescue, that you will find the name is the grass variety and the endophyte variety. In other words, a two-part name. The true name of this product is Jessup Max Q, where Jessup is the fescue genetics, Max Q is the novel endophyte genetics. If you look over on the left and you see that seed tag or the tag titled Alliance for Grassland Renewal, this is a collaboration among the companies selling novel endophyte tall fescue seed, where they have agreed that they will provide this information on the left on every bag of seed. One particular thing that I would point out to you is down here at the lower right that says seed contains live Max Q brand endophyte. Plant before May 15th, and it had the 2000 date, or contact Pennington Seed in Georgia to exchange for fresh tested seed. One of the very critical things about seeding novel endophyte tall fescue is to make sure that you're planting fresh seed where the seed, the plant genetics is good and will germinate, but that the endophyte that's present in the seed is also fresh and good and will germinate or will live, and it hasn't died before you've had a chance to plant it. How you store this seed matters quite a bit. Storing it frozen or in a refrigerated setting will help make sure that the seed and the endophyte remain viable. So there you go. There's the two parts I just highlighted about that seed tag. All right. So this brings us to a break point in the lecture on establishment. That's part one. When we come back, we will start with seeding date and rate in part two. Thank you, and we'll see you then.